Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Allison's Corner. As always, I am your host, Allison, and I am so excited that you have decided to give us a listen today. So, I'm not even gonna lie. This episode today, it's one where I had to kind of check myself before I even hit the record button because today we're going to be talking about ideas versus execution. And if I'm being a little honest, I've been both people. I've been the person that's had a million ideas swirling around in my head. And I've also been the person who actually follows through with said ideas. And those two people live completely different lives, very different. And while having an idea is a beautiful thing, I am learning that not executing it is killing my output and my creativity. So if you're in the same boat as me where you're stuck in idea land and you're trying to sail over to get to execution, go ahead, grab a drink, pull up a seat. We're going to get into it today. So, I want you to think about this for a second. How many ideas have you had this year alone? Stop, pause, just think. Not even just the big life-changing ideas. I'm even talking about the small ones too. Probably it was like I should be posting more. I really need to be taking this seriously. I've been meaning to start that thing. I really could do something with whatever this is. All of that, all of those ideas that are sitting in your head. Now, here comes the real question. How many of those did you actually execute? Exactly. And I'm not asking this to make you feel bad. Trust me, I'm not asking you to make you feel worse than you probably already do. I'm asking because that gap right there is that space between what you thought about and what you actually did. And that gap, that little in between space, that is your life because that gap represents your discipline, it represents your consistency, and it even represents your honesty with yourself. Because, listen, I know it is easy to be inspired and it's very easy to have a moment. What's not easy though is actually following through when that moment passes. And I do think that's where a lot of us get it twisted because we think having the idea is the hard part. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think so. I think ideas come to you all the time. At least they do to me. It could be me taking a shower and literally an idea pops in my head. Or even when I'm driving, to go to the grocery store, I get an idea. I mean, listen, I'm a night owl, so y'all, I'll be up late at night in my feelings and an idea comes to me. Sometimes even it's when I'm scrolling on social media and I'm watching somebody else do what I wish I was actually doing. Ideas are everywhere, but if I want to be truthful, execution is rare, and that is a big difference. I also want to say something that might, again, sound a little harsh. Remember, I'm not just talking to you, I'm also talking to me too. Nobody cares about your idea. Respectfully, nobody cares. And nobody cares about what you could do. People respond with what they see you actually doing. So you could have the best idea in the world, but if you never execute it, listen, girl, it doesn't exist. It's just a thought. Meanwhile, you have somebody over here with a very mid idea, and they're out here building a whole life off of it. And the reason why is because they decided to actually move on it. And in some ways, I really had to sit with myself when it came to that because I mean, y'all, I'll again be honest. I used to be the kind of person who would say things like, oh, I just need to get more organized. I just need to figure it out first. I just want to do it right. And all of that sounds good, right? It sounds like I'm being responsible. It sounds like, okay, I'm going to take this seriously. But if we're being real, sometimes that preparation is really just procrastination. Because at some point, you're not preparing anymore. You're avoiding what it is that you really want to do. And a lot of times, avoidance feels and it looks very comfortable because as long as you haven't started, in your head, you're like, well, I also haven't failed. But that can be dangerous because as long as you haven't posted, you feel as though nobody can judge you. And as long as it stays in your head, the idea itself stays perfect. But the moment that you have to execute it, now all of it becomes very real. And the reason why it becomes real is because now it's visible. Now it can be critiqued. Now, I mean, I'll be honest, now it can flop. And a lot of us would rather protect our ego than actually build something. And listen, I'm not saying that in a judgmental way at all. Remember, I'm talking to you just as much as I'm talking to myself because listen, I get it. Execution will humble you, and it will humble you quickly. You'll go from, oh, this is such a good idea to, oh, snap, why is this so hard? And you'll realize you don't know as much as you thought. You'll realize things take a lot longer than you probably anticipated. And you'll realize nobody is really paying attention yet. And that's the part right there. That is the part where so many people stop. And I want to hone in on that a little bit because we don't talk enough about how boring execution can be. Like, really talk about it. Because execution, it's not always exciting and it's not always creative and it's not always giving, I'm walking in my purpose. Sometimes it's just doing the same thing again and again and again. And that monotony can get really boring very quickly, and it can get very unexciting very quickly as well. You know, when you have to post when you don't feel like it, when you have to show up even when you're tired, when you are, listen, working on something that nobody sees yet, it sucks, but that's execution. And the truth is, your idea is not going to carry you through that, but discipline will. What's also going to carry you through is your habits and the structure that you frame. Because to be real, motivation that comes and goes. Trust me, you feel inspired today and completely off by tomorrow. So, if you're relying on how you feel to determine whether you execute, I'm sorry to tell you, you're not going to be consistent. And I want to talk about consistency for a minute. And I'm going to use this podcast as an example. A lot of people I know have started podcasts. And if you ever ask me about any advice on how to start a podcast, what to do as far as a podcast is concerned, anything, I will never gatekeep. I will give you all the secrets, right? And I'll even be a little bit more honest. Podcasting has low barrier to entry. You got a mic, you have a camera, you set it up, you press record, and you put it out into the world. But one thing that I notice with a lot of people when it does come to podcasting is that they'll be consistent for a couple of months and then completely fall off. And when I ask some of these people, some of them being colleagues of mine, like, hey, what happened to your podcast? Because I'll support and listen and really, just help them out. And they'll always tell me, "Ugh, Allison, I don't know how you do it because this is really hard. It's really hard to be consistent." And that is it. That is the thing. Because people love to say that they want to be consistent, but they don't truly understand what that requires. Doing this podcast and doing anything takes consistency. And you have to fight through your lack of motivation or your lack of inspiration to be consistent. And because consistency is not doing something when you feel like it. You know, consistency is doing it even when you don't. And sometimes consistency is doing it when it's inconvenient and when it's repetitive. And honestly, when it's not getting the response you hoped for, because that's the real test. I also want to add that we live in a society that thrives off of being viral. And a lot of people want to be viral really bad. And I get it. You see the pros, you rarely see the cons, and you just want to explode onto the scene. But if you think about the greats, right? The people you admire in your field, the people who you emulate and who you one day want to be like, they didn't just explode, right? It took years of constant hard work. It took years of being repetitive, of building the habits and the structures that you don't see for them to get to where they are now. And that will always be the real test of what you are able to accomplish when you execute. I also think another thing that keeps people stuck is perfectionism. And of course, we just did an episode about that. And I really, really would love for you guys to go back and listen to it. It's with Jeanette Dove. And I think we've convinced ourselves that our first version needs to be good. And as she was explaining, she was saying that our first version doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to exist. And sometimes that's it. Because your first attempt is not supposed to be amazing. It's just supposed to be proof that you started. And you can't improve something that doesn't even exist. You can't refine an idea that never left your head. And let me say this too, a lot of y'all are not beginners. Okay? You're just constantly restarting. Because what you do is you'll start, you stop, you disappear, you come back, and you start again. And every single time you do that, you reset your own progress. You, at the end of the day, don't need a new idea. You need to stay consistent with the one that you already have. And again, I had to check myself on that too because there have been times when I knew exactly what I needed to do, but I just didn't feel like doing it. And instead of being honest about it, I would tell myself, oh, I just need a better plan. I just need to do this. No, I needed better discipline. And y'all, that is a hard pill to swallow because discipline, it is not cute. It's not an aesthetic. It's not something that you can package nicely. It's doing what you said you were going to do, even again when you don't feel like it. And here's something I kind of had to learn the hard way, right? Confidence is something that does not come before execution. I will say that again. Confidence does not come before execution. It comes from it. So you don't wake up one day feeling ready. You become ready by doing it anyway. You become ready when you show up, when you try, when you fail, when you adjust, when you pivot, and when you continue. And that's how confidence is built. And when you look at people who are doing what you want to do, it's just easy to think, oh, they're naturally disciplined, or they might have something you don't. But a lot of the time, they just didn't stop. And that's the secret. They didn't stop when it got boring. They didn't stop when it was quiet. They didn't stop when it wasn't perfect. They literally just kept going. And over time, consistency begins to compound, right? So one day turns into a week turns into a month turns into a body of work. And from the outside looking in, it looks like success. But really, it's just execution that's been stacked over time. So, if you're listening right now and you know you've been sitting on something, I don't want you to overthink this. I don't want you to plan another perfect moment. I want you to do one thing. Just one real thing. Something small but tangible. I want you to go ahead and record the first episode. I want you to write the first page of that novel. I want you to post that first video. And it doesn't have to be perfect, it just needs to be done. Because your life is not going to change from another idea, it's going to change from what you do with the ones that you already have. And y'all, I am not saying this like I have it all figured out. Trust me, we are all in this together. But what I'm saying is that as someone who is actively choosing execution over and over and over again, that it is uncomfortable and it can be inconvenient. And listen, I'll even be more honest, sometimes I just don't feel like it. But at some point, you have to decide who you are and who you want to be. So, are you someone who has ideas or are you someone who executes? Because again, those are two different identities we're talking about, and your life will reflect whichever one you choose. So, yes, ideas are fun, they're cool, they're exciting, but execution, that is what really changes your life. Now, before we leave, of course, I want to end today's episode with a quote from Steve Jobs. He says, "To me, ideas are worth nothing unless executed. They are just a multiplier. Execution is worth millions." So if this episode hit you, send it to somebody who's been sitting on something for way too long. And of course, as always, y'all, God bless. Have an amazing day. And thank y'all again for listening to Allison's Corner.